Over the weekend, the lead singer for the band Lost Prophets, Ian Watkins, was murdered in prison. And in light of this news, I'm gonna do what a lot of small-brained people thought I did in my Charlie Kirk video and gloat over his death. Now, before you grab some pearls to clutch, let me briefly go over some of the things this shitbag did, and trust me, this is extremely depraved. He pled guilty to 13 child sex offenses and was serving a 29-year prison sentence. And we're not just talking about him sleeping around with teenagers, though that is also horrible. And he partook in that as well, including one teenage fan, who he supposedly took the virginity of and also pissed on her face. But his depravity also included women who were fans of his, and were also mothers of infants, conspiring to give their infants up to him for him to sexually abuse. Watkins was even in possession of videos showcasing him and the mother of one of these infants performing various sex acts on the infant, and I'll just leave it at that. One of the other mothers was also planning on moving in with Watkins, and Watkins texted to her, "If you belong to me, so does your baby." She replied with, "Understandable, a mother-daughter slave duo worshipping you." Watkins replied, "That's all she will know, a life of filth." Look, I'm someone who does generally prefer rehabilitation over punishment, but as is the case with most things, there are limits. And this goes way above and beyond the limit. There is no rehabilitating this. And do you want to know how I know there was zero chance of Ian Watkins becoming a better person? As if the shit that I just described wasn't enough to convince you of that. He never once displayed an ounce of remorse for his actions. Hell, he didn't even try to fucking feign remorse. After his arrest, he was on the phone with a female fan, and he referred to his horrific crimes as megalols. And he even said, "I don't know what everyone is so worked up over. You molested minors, including infants, you fucking monster." He even had a laptop whose password was "I fuck kids." This was clearly someone who took a lot of joy in the horrendous shit he was doing. So why should anyone believe for a single second that this was a man who would have turned himself around and not have just gone right back to indulging in the same depraved crimes the second he's released? He was 35 back when he was arrested in 2012 and was given a 29-year prison sentence. He would have been in his 60s had he lived out the entirety of his sentence, and he still had some fangirls even after going to prison. I have no doubt had he survived the entirety of his sentence, there'd be some women flaunting themselves at him, going like, "Here, you can have me and my baby." And do you really think for a fucking second that a monster of this magnitude would show any restraint? That's why I say good riddance. Good fucking riddance. You forfeit the fucking value of your life if you choose to be this fucking evil. Now, I'm not gonna go so far as to outright praise whoever killed him. I heard it was two prisoners. If you read up a little on the prison Ian Watkins was in and learn that a lot of the worst criminals go to that prison, it's safe to assume that, yeah, his killers were likely not good people as well. And they likely didn't kill him out of genuine disgust over his crimes. He owed some debts to some other prisoners, namely prisoners who would have drugs smuggled into the prison, and prisoners who would offer him protection. The latter signals to me that he was in constant worry over something like this happening to him. And this wasn't the first time he was attacked by other prisoners either. 2 years ago, he was also stabbed and he almost fucking died. And I hope in the 2 years between that event and his death, he was in constant fear and misery over his own safety, and he didn't have a single peaceful moment. That means he would know just a fraction of the fucking horror his victims have to endure on a day-to-day basis, especially the infants that he sexually abused who are obviously older now, and there is a non-0% chance that they know they were not only abused by this fuckface, but also by their goddamn mothers who handed them on a silver platter to this monster and actively partook in the abuse. That's why, again, I'm not going to praise whoever killed him, but I will still say they did a service to every child who may have ended up being abused by this man had he ended up living out the duration of his sentence. There are very obviously plenty of people who die who I don't mourn the death deaths of. Like, say, if someone devotes their life to being a vile, hateful piece of shit, but don't do anything nearly as depraved as what this guy did, I'm just like, well, yeah, that sucks, but I'm also not really gonna shed any tears for them. I'm such a horrible person, I know. But when it comes to someone who directly contributes to such an exponential degree of harm and suffering and depravity, like this piece of shit, and they end up dying, yeah, no, I'm just gonna outright say they got what they fucking deserved, and it didn't happen soon enough. And that's just how I am. If misfortune or even death were to strike, baby rapists and serial killers or certain genocidal and evil world leaders, the absolute worst of the worst of humanity, several tiers above people merely just saying horrible things, I'm going to say, yeah, good, the world is just a smidge brighter without them. That doesn't mean I'm actively thinking about and hoping for the deaths of these people, because that's just unhealthy, and these people honestly just don't deserve that amount of mental energy anyway. But when that misfortune or death strikes, I'm just like, yeah, good riddance. Some people may twist and distort what I'm saying in this video into, I like it when everyone I don't like dies. And you know what, at this point, whatever. If you want to die on the hill of scolding me for not putting my grievances aside and sufficiently mourning the baby rapist, then be my fucking guest, and that says a lot more about you than it does me. I choose to abandon all civility when it comes to someone who molested infants and even gave them meth on some occasions. Yes, that is also something he did. The depths of his depravity really knew no bounds. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Bye-bye.